Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Gods in Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is an adult fantasy standalone, and it takes place during the Jazz Age in Mexico. This follows our main character of Cassiopeia, and her mother and her are sort of outcast from their family. Her family is a very wealthy family in this part of Mexico, and so she is kind of looked down on and almost treated like a Cinderella type character because her mom ended up marrying someone who is indigenous, and the family was just very much not into that. So they treat her very poorly, particularly her cousin. But one day she goes into her grandfather's room and discovers a chest, ends up opening it, and she releases a Mayan death god. And he tells her that she needs to help him on this quest to get back his underworld kingdom, and everything kind of goes from there. So first off, we'll talk about the world building. This was beautiful and a story that I could very easily see in my head. I really got all the feelings of the Jazz Age and just the different places they traveled to, because this is a quest type story. So they end up going to a bunch of different cities. They start out in a more rural area and then end up going to Mexico City at one point, some other places, and I just got the feeling of the Jazz Age and how people looked and how people acted and all of that. And there was a lot of just like commentary on the history and everything that was going on kind of like politically and just socially and everything, so I could really get a feeling and a sense of where these characters were living. There was also a lot of talk, obviously, of Mayan and also Aztec folklore and mythology, and we got some imagery there as well, which was very beautiful and sometimes just a little like beautiful and creepy. I compare this, and I have compared this to American Gods by Neil Gaiman. American Gods has predominantly, I would say, Western folklore, though there's some like African stuff in there too, but there's a lot more of like the Western mythology. This obviously has the Mayan and the Aztec, but in that similar vein of like seeing some of the creepy things that gods are doing, that same feeling was present in here. Next, I'm gonna talk about our characters. So Cassiopeia as a main character I really liked, but I did feel at a distance from all of our characters. I mentioned this in my wrap-up, but the thing that kept me from getting really fully invested in the story is that I felt like I was being told a folktale or a myth, and that these characters are part of this folktale and myth, and in that way I felt very separated from them, the same way that I feel separated from like the characters in the Odyssey and things like that. I am more connected to those characters in like retelling form than I am in their like original myth. So this just felt like I was just very distant from them. I pulled for Cassiopeia and I liked her, but I still just didn't feel this like super close connection to her. I also never felt like she was particularly in danger because this felt like a folktale or a myth. I was like, this is all gonna work out. Like I just had that sense almost the entire time in a way that, whether that was what actually happened or not, it just didn't keep me from feeling like super invested in the story. This does have a Death and the Maiden type trope going on, which I really liked, so I did like our death god. I found, again, the imagery with him and what was going on with him and their relationship to be really interesting, and how being around her was sort of making him more human, and just their bond and their connection from like reluctant companions to friends to like maybe more. That was a really good dynamic that I liked watching. I also found our villains to be fairly well fleshed out. They were, again, characters that you could understand. They were more antagonists. Yes, they all did really bad things, but throughout the story you kind of get to see like how they got here and what the situations in their lives made them the way that they are, which is interesting. Do I want a full book about people turning into villains? No. But do I like to see it kind of sprinkled in the story so I kind of get where they're coming from a bit? Even because, you know, every villain is the hero in their own story? Yes. As far as the plot, I kind of touched on that. Like I said, this very much reads like a folktale, myth, quest type story, so it does kind of follow some of those beats that you're familiar with if you've read some of these kind of quest folktale type stories. So that was just a very easy read. This is a fairly quick read, but at the same time I also found myself not super compelled to pick it up. It wasn't necessarily like fast paced, not that I wanted it to be, but just had the same cadence, like I said, of like a folktale or a myth. So I found myself not rushing through it and just kind of like sitting with the pretty imagery and everything like that. But again, really beautiful writing and just had that folklore feeling that I think the author was going for. But overall, although this was very beautifully written and it had very beautiful imagery, I wasn't emotionally connected to the characters and their story, so I ended up giving this 3.75 out of 5 stars. This is a story I would love to see brought to screen though. So comment down below, let me know what you thought of Gods of Jade and Shadow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.